waifus, trade fights for better views. We both need something new. Maybe we should just tell them.
Hello, hive-minded readers, and welcome to the Books and the Bees podcast. Just like bees play a crucial role in pollinating flowers and sustaining life, books pollinate minds and nurture the soul. We see the connection between the two, the delicate dance of ideas and stories that enrich our lives.
I'm Hailey.
And I'm Cody.
Welcome to our podcast.
Welcome. Hello. It is episode 36.
36. Let's go.
We are like every day. It's amazing.
Yes, we're like on a schedule. We really are.
Yeah, we're killing it. Even though like we've been recording on off days and we had a bunch of shit happen in the last 2, 3, 4 months, really.
Yes.
Like we've gotten into it and it feels like the podcast is part of our natural like cadence of the week. At least it is for me. Like it's like podcast week, podcast day is always part of the week, which is cool.
Yep, it's like officially in my schedule. It's ingrained at this point.
Yeah. It's so much fun. And I have to say, I cannot wait to talk about it. We have the coolest episode today because we have our very first author interview.
Yes.
Which you probably know by the title of the podcast.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about One-on-One by Jamie Harrow. What a fantastic book. Of course, we're going to talk about it later, so we won't get into it. But we're so excited to have her on the podcast, and it's going to be so much fun. And it's such a good time for this book too. Like sports romance this is the perfect time of year for a sports romance.
Listen, fall time equals sports kickoffs equals, like perching our butts in front of the TV and watching all of it.
100%. 100%.
I feel like we've
can't wait.
been keeping a little bit of a secret this whole time because we've known about this for a while.
Yeah, it's been on the docket for like 2 months, maybe.
Yeah.
And we've been reluctant to say anything, not because we were like told not to or anything, but like, schedules fall through and things happen. So we didn't want to like promise we couldn't deliver, but it's happening and we cannot wait.
It's happening. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. Whoop, 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 whoop. Well, before we get really, really excited and go to our interview, should we discuss what we're reading?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay. Hailey, what you reading?
I am still reading the book that I was reading in the last episode because I really haven't had a lot of time to myself to read books.
Yep.
It's been a very busy week for me this week. And by busy, I mean like exhausting, where I just kind of like get home and like literally just lay down and fall asleep because I'm just so tired. But yeah, same book, Ever After Always by Chloe Liese. I hope I'm pronouncing the author's name right, but it's a really good book. Still, I'm a little bit further than I was last time. But yeah, amazing book. An amazing series too. If you're interested in other books in this series, it's the Bergman brothers. It's a group of, it's a family, and like it kind of follows each book as like a different family member. For the most part it's a bunch of brothers, but this one happens to be the sister. Spoilers, I guess. And it's really good, and I think there's like a lot. I think there's like 7 books now in the series, and one just came out recently. My apologies for not having that on hand, but yeah, really great book. I enjoy it.
Yay. Yeah. And this was part of your birthday haul, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was part of my birthday haul. So I'm making my way through it.
Yay. Yeah. I love it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, both of us, we've both not had a whole lot of time for reading, unfortunately. And we've also, like we mentioned earlier, we've been kind of off on our recording days. And so there hasn't been a lot of space in between our podcast recording episodes, so it's been a little hard to talk about books because just physically we don't have the time in between episodes.
Yes.
But hopefully after this week we'll get back to our regularly scheduled program.
Yes, my plan is to read a bunch more on the weekends. So Hopefully.
Oh yeah, because you've also started a new job, which changes everything.
Yep. Yeah, the work from home life is no longer a thing, so I have to drive and. I know. I do spend my breaks though reading, so.
That's good.
Oh.
I'm really bad at that. I think about it. I even brought a book today to work, and I was like, I'm gonna read at lunch, and I didn't. I just went to the cafeteria, got a salad, and then just went back to my desk and went back to work like a sad little worker bee. So I don't know what to say about that.
We don't like sad little worker bees. We like happy little reading bees.
We do. Happy little reading bees. Yeah. Not me today, unfortunately. Someday I'll try.
Eventually. We'll get there.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. What are you reading, Cody?
Well, so I finished The Night Ends with Fire by KX Song, which is the Mulan retelling, and I have to say it was exactly how it was promised. I really, really loved it. It's such a good vibe book, especially if you're into like fantasy, like Chinese fantasy. It feels like a kung fu movie or like a kung fu book in a lot of ways. And it is. I mentioned this last week, but the Mulan actual Chinese mythology story or history story, I guess, depending on the terminology. Apologies if I said it wrong. Does end not super great. So this story was trying to be more reflective of that without getting into spoilers compared to the Mulan Disney version, which is obviously a very happy ending. So I don't think it's that much of a spoiler to think it's not that expectation coming in.
Yeah.
But I really liked it, and the author's note at the end was really good. So I would say check it out, especially if you're like a Mulan fan. I think you'll respect it, and there is going to be a sequel, I learned. So I don't know if it's been announced, but there's a big to be continued at the end of this book. So definitely going to have a further connection, and I'm very excited for that to come out whenever it does. Hopefully soon, like next year.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds so good.
Can't wait. And I'm going to buy a physical copy with the sprayed edges because it's beautiful. It's got a little phoenix on the side, or a bunch of little phoenixes on the side. It's very pretty.
Yes.
So I can't wait for that.
We love a sprayed edge.
Yeah, we do. We really do. Honestly, it's like the best.
Yes.
The best trend of 2024, I feel like, is the sprayed edges. I feel like they really took off this year, and we're going to remember this year as the sprayed edge year for sure.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Way to go, book publishers. We love you. Yeah. I also started another book that I've really, really just started, so I don't have a lot to say about it. It's called This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mohtar. I think is how you say that name. I'm sorry, I probably just butchered it. And Max Gladstone. This was a really, really popular book when it first came out, I think back in 2019. And it's one that I have just wanted to read and never have. It has been recommended to me as a big fan of sci-fi and kind of epistolary literary fiction novels. This one always gets touted. It was like number 1 or number 2 of the Reading Glasses Top 100, which is, I've talked about Reading Glasses before. They're a podcast that I love, and it was number 1 for their Top 100, kind of spoofing the NYT's Top 100 list. And I loved all the other books on that Top 100 list, so really excited to try this. I have been told so many good things about it, and it's such a fun book. The cover of it is a cardinal and a blue jay, which happen to be my 2 favorite birds, I guess. And spoiler alert, now that I'm in Virginia, I see them on a semi-regular basis, which is really exciting. So I love that. I'm just going to read a really quick description for it so that you guys get a sense for it, because I'm like 10 pages in, so I honestly don't have any idea. But among the ashes of a dying world, an agent of the Commandant finds a letter. It reads, "Burn before reading." Thus begins an unlikely correspondence between 2 rival agents hell-bent on securing the best possible future for their warring factions. Now what began as a taunt, a battlefield boast, grows into something more, something epic, something romantic, something that could change the past and the future.
Wow.
I can't wait to read this book. I know it's going to be good. I'm just so pumped for it, and it's going to be, and it's short too. It's like 200 and something pages, so it's going to be a fly-by novel for me, and I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Wow.
It's just one of those books that like you always want to read and then for some reason never do for like years. So it's nice to finally explore it.
Finally get into it. Hell yeah.
Oh, can't wait. Right. Should we jump into beekeeping?
Yeah.
Okay. Hailey, you have a little bit of beekeeping. Do you want to start?
Yeah. So my beekeeping is basically just kind of I don't know, it's more of like an author thing. But obviously for those of you who have listened to the podcast and who, you know, kind of know my love for Lila Sage's books, the Done and Dusted and The Swift and Saddled, Lost and Lassoed is coming out and I'm so excited. But there is a pre-order and there is a thing going on that if you pre-order, there's an incentive if you do, and it's basically just like extra fun stuff. And I think you get like the first 5 chapters when you pre-order from anywhere.
Shit.
Yeah.
Cool.
My apologies if any of this is incorrect information. I'm literally just like reading it off of the Instagram page. But yeah, and so like I'm just really excited and I'm totally stoked for this book and I cannot wait. I think it comes out in November. Yeah, supposedly it's supposed to be published on November 5th. Don't quote me, because I know sometimes stuff like that changes, so, but it's soon.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's soon. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
We're both big fans of the series. I've read the first one, and the second one is on my docket somewhere. I had to push it back because of how busy I've been, but yeah, super good series. Looking forward to it. Great books coming out this year. Great romance books coming out this year. Amazing. Honestly. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Yay. I have just a smidge of beekeeping because I moved to a new town, and so I got to check out the bookstores that are there. And we are lucky enough to have 4 or 5 bookstores in our town that we're in, not including the Barnes & Noble, but all indie bookstores. One of them being a comic book store called Hello Comics, and they actually have 2 locations. I have been a huge fan of this comic book store since I moved. They have an app to keep track of your pull list, which is amazing. So you can just order everything on the app and then go pick it up instead of having to like physically go in or call them to add stuff on. So that's been a lot of fun for me, and I've really enjoyed it, even though I'm struggling trying to get the app to work for me because I'm bad with technology, but so far it's been okay. So shout out to them. And then my wife and I did a little bit of a tour downtown the other day, and we saw 2 bookstores, Blue Whale Books, which was this phenomenal used bookstore that kind of had a rare selection collection. That was an unintentional rhyme. Very cool vibe. A lot of like dad books, like history, biographies, things like that. But also had really, really cool prints of like old medical, like anatomy pictures or like bird pictures, you know, kind of like the, 17th century birder vibe, which I totally plan on buying some of those as soon as I get my first paycheck at my new job.
Yeah.
So,
hell yeah.
I can't wait. I'm very, very excited. It was a really cool place. I'm very excited to go back. And then we also visited another used bookstore called Second Act Books, which was very fun. The lady who was working there, I'm not sure if she was the owner. She kind of sounded like she was super nice. She's probably like in her 70s and just having the best time of her life running this bookstore. And they had a really, really cool selection and pretty decently sized too for being downtown. So really great books. Happy to be in a town where there's more than... In my old town, there was only 2 bookstores outside of Barnes & Noble, so here we've got already double that. Wow. So, yeah, definitely living my best life over here.
Yeah,
as far as the book world goes.
That sounds amazing. Man, I wish we had that many bookstores. I think there's only like 2 bookstores, but we do have a traveling book store in our town,
which is really cool.
Which is really cool. And I will.
You sent me their Instagram page, and it's very cool.
It's really cool, but I'm not gonna disclose obviously on the podcast what it is because it would literally give my location. So
yeah, we don't want to do that. Yeah. Please don't find us without our permission. Yeah. Just be nice. Just chill. It's fine. We can be friends over the podcast.
Yeah.
Like, let's keep it professional.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Please.
Thank you.
If you see me in the wild, I mean, I guess say hi, but like, don't be weird.
Yeah. Don't be weird. Thank you. We appreciate you so much.
Yes.
It's funny because like I listen to a lot of podcasts, obviously, because we both have a podcast. So it makes sense that we listen to podcasts. And it's hard to forget that you don't know the people you talk with every week because, you know, if you listen to a podcast every week, you feel like they're your friends. And if you listen to them on the same day, it's like you get weekly coffee with them. And it's hard to forget that they don't know who you are and you should not walk up to them like you know who they are. So I get it. I totally get it. Because it's such a intimate medium. Like we're in your ear holes, literally. So
yeah. We're basically just like having a one-sided conversation a little bit.
Yeah. And you're probably enjoying, like, hopefully you're enjoying the conversation and, you know, following in with us. So yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah. We appreciate our listeners. We
do. We really do.
We really do.
Oh, awesome. Well, is that all we have before we jump into our main part of the show?
Yeah, I think that's all I had.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Well, without further ado, we are now going to transition into our interview with Jamie Harrow for her book, upcoming book called One-on-One: Sports Basketball Romance at Its Finest. The book comes out on September 24th, which is the same day that this episode is dropping. So if you're listening to this, that means the book's available. We cannot wait to talk about it. Hailey, you got a physical ARC
Yes,
copy?
I did. I literally, it's my first one that I've ever gotten physical copy of, and I literally cherish it. So
we're so legit. We are so legit.
So cool.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go to the interview, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Well, welcome back, listeners. We have such an exciting treat for you today. Hailey and I have our very first author interview, and it is none other than Jamie Harrow, the author of One-on-One. Jamie, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you. And I'm honored to be your first author guest.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited. We finished your book, and it is amazing.
So good.
Thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, it's the perfect time of year for it too. You know, the weather's starting to change, basketball season's coming in, you know, starting up. I'm not a gigantic basketball fan. I can't say I've actually really watched the sport, but your book really made me want to pay attention to it. And I just moved to a town that has a very big college basketball team, so it felt really right to start this book right now.
I think you should check out a game this year.
Yeah.
You're right. I should.
That's what I'm really here for. I'm actually recruiting people to become basketball fans. That's what it's all about.
That's so smart.
Yes.
Like, what does ESPN have on the book industry?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right.
We've tapped a new clientele.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, the first question that we always start with and that we'd like to ask you is, what are you reading right now?
So I just today started reading an early copy of a book called You Between the Lines, and the author's name is Katie Naymon, and it's a debut coming out in February. And it's about two like former high school rivals who are now in the same MFA program. They're like battling poets, and it is very, very entertaining. So that comes out in February. And my next read, I'll give a little shout out to my next read too, because I just love talking about other people's books. I'm actually going to read, it's coming out in a couple of weeks. It's called The Dividing Sky. The author's name is Jill Tew, and it's actually a YA sci-fi romance. And I don't read a lot of YA, but I've heard so many good things about it. And the author is like so funny on social media that I just know that the book is going to be amazing. So excited about that one.
Oh, those sound
Yeah, that's
great.
so great. We always joke about how we always like make our TBRs grow whenever we talk about what books we're reading. So that's really cool that we'll have more to join our TBR.
Yeah, it never ends. It only gets longer.
Literally.
It only gets longer. That's actually how Hailey and I, we differ a lot in our TBRs. I think Hailey's is, we used to keep a running count, but I think it's below 100 still, right?
Below 100.
Mine is like 400 and something. It might be 500 by now on Goodreads. And so we have very different TBR lists.
Yes.
That's amazing. I'm afraid to count. I don't know if I could even do it.
Yeah. Thankfully, Goodreads does a good job of keeping track with all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It really comes in handy.
For sure. I try to stay away from Goodreads now, but
That's
as
totally
a reader,
fair. That's
as
fair.
a reader, for sure.
That's fair.
Yeah. We've definitely had that discussion as well on the podcast with the Amazon superpower that's happening for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
I just don't want to read reviews of my own book anymore. So that's
also a good point. Oh. Well, we have just a few questions prepared for you to open up the discussion. Hailey, do you want to start?
Yeah. So I just have a few questions. One of them being, what character or characters do you relate to the most in the book, if at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's funny because Annie, the main character, I feel like there are ways I relate to her, and then there are ways that like I wish I could be more like her. So I think this was a subconscious thing, but in retrospect, when I wrote this book, I hadn't written anything in a really long time. Like I had been a writer when I was young, like a teenager and in college, and then I like went to law school and pursued a more practical path. And then I came back to writing when I wrote this book. And so I wrote a character who was going back to the thing she loved after many years away from it and sort of feeling out of place and had a lot of feelings about it, but also fell back in love with it during, over the course of the book. And I think like maybe I was subconsciously processing some of my own feelings about going back to writing as I was doing that. But Annie is also much more assertive than I am and outgoing, which is probably why, I like to sit in my office and read and write. Whereas she's out like on the basketball court elbowing people out of the way to get her videos shot. Yeah, so I think she's the one I think about the most, and probably has the most of me in her. And also we have similar backgrounds. Like the reason I ended up writing a sports book, my dad was a basketball coach when I was younger. I grew up in like a sports family. We were always playing sports or we were going to sporting events. That was like the thing we did. And so I kind of worked that background into her character as well. That sort of father-daughter, because she had a coach for a father. That sort of father-daughter dynamic that I explored in the book is partly inspired by how I grew up. Although my dad is alive and is very glad that he's like, you killed me off in the book. I'm like, it's not you. No one in this book is a real person. Yeah, he just has a lot in common with you.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's just occurring to me, we should probably like give a quick summary of the book. Do you want to summarize one-on-one?
I can do it. Yes, I've had to do it a lot lately, so I can do it. So one-on-one is about a floundering woman who returns to the university she attended 8 years after graduating to work as a video producer for the school's basketball team. And she finds herself working side by side and butting heads with the annoyingly attractive guy that she had interned for the team with when she was a student.
Perfect. And I have to say, I loved actually almost all the characters in the book, except for obviously one notable exception. And I related so well with Ben. I'm a scientist in my like day job, and so the nerdy like stats guy was definitely somebody that I totally vibed with, and I just loved his aesthetic so much. He was
That's awesome.
Such a fun character. Yeah.
I wanted to like write about two characters who had sort of unique jobs in sports, but whose jobs were also very different from each other. Like, obviously she works in sports and has a creative job. She's making these videos, and it's like, oh, there's like almost an artistic element to it. And then his job is obviously much more analytical because he's the kind of team data analyst, and they both love the sport, but they see it in very different ways. They're just coming at it from very different angles.
That's very true.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah. What's funny enough is the more I read, really relate to Annie, because I was not necessarily the manager of our basketball in college or anything, but I was a high school basketball team manager, which was like really cool. Oh. And so like when they were the scene where they were on the bus together, her and Ben, and they were like waiting for all the players to come back, and just kind of the like when you watch like players grow up from like freshmen to, you know, it's like it like made me feel so nostalgic. It really took me back to those years of like that camaraderie and stuff. And yeah, and I'm also a former like sports enthusiast, and I played sports like growing up and stuff. So yeah, it just kind of it was so relatable, and I really related to.
Thank you.
Yeah,
the camaraderie is definitely one of the best parts of like working in sports, and obviously you get a version of that in a lot of different workplaces or things that you participate in. But I don't know, there's something about like, and I think that's why we see like a lot of sports in media, like movies and TV shows and stuff, because it's just so fun to have that big group and everybody's got their quirks, and you know, you have the built-in drama of the team trying to win. It makes a very I don't know, I didn't really consciously think about this, but it makes a very easy setup for a book, because there's a lot built in that you need to make a good story.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd have to say, I mean, obviously our listeners, the book comes out today as you're listening to this episode, so on the 24th. So we're not going to be majorly spoilery.
Yeah.
But the end of the book, like the tension of the last like 50 or so pages is just intense, and totally feels like one of those high profile sports movies. So you totally nailed it on the head with that. It was such a good ending to the book. I loved it.
Thank you. I mean, I feel like that's anything that's about sports, it has to like work its way up to that exciting last game or playoff moment, or in this story, it's things that are happening like off the court too. And it just like all has to come together in a big dramatic finish. And so that's what I tried to do.
You nailed it. Totally nailed it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. What I really like about the book is, well, really, like in sports romances in general, they are just such a big topic right now. And like, that's I feel like the number one romance category is sports romances. And they're just so much fun because of that, like sports tension, but also romantic tension. And in this book, you know, there's also another wrinkle to the story, which we'll dive into here in just a second. But like it's just the cumulative story and how they kind of tie together at the end. It makes these romances like so much fun to read, and they're super popular right now, and I love them. They're so great.
Yeah, so popular. And I mean, this one, I've been calling it sports adjacent because neither of them are an athlete, right? Like most sports romances, at least one of the love interest is an athlete. But yeah, so I've been calling it sports adjacent, but I feel like there's still a lot of sports in the book. But yeah.
Yeah, Hailey and I we've been discussing quite a few sports romances this year. It's just been like one after another, very good, a lot of fun.
It's funny to see the trends, and like when you write, they say like don't write to the trends because you're not going to be able to predict what is going to be popular by the time your book is coming out. So I just got lucky. And I mean, I had in college, I wrote a sports column for my school paper. So I think when I decided to write a book, like the setting came first to me, and it was like, well, I know how to write about sports, so this is what I'm gonna do.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's like the write what you know sort of thing. Yeah.
Especially for a first book, like not totally knowing what you're doing yet. At least just stepping into something familiar.
Yeah, very true. So, following up on that, like, what's been the biggest challenge for you writing your first book? Like, what was a big surprise you didn't think was going to be, or like, what's the hurdle that you don't expect for writing a book?
I think one of the hardest parts, so for me, it was something I did. At first, I was doing it for myself. It was like the early part of the pandemic. So this was 2020. And everyone's like reflecting on their lives during that time, I guess, because they're all at home. So I was like, I always wanted to be a writer, but I never pursued it. And I wasn't sleeping at night anyway. So I was like, let me just try. And I'm just going to do it for myself and just see what happens. So I think the hardest step early on was taking it from something I did for myself that I could write and kind of pretend that no one was ever going to read, to actually putting it out there and starting to like ask people what they thought. And that was like a huge scary step, but it gets easier every time. Like every time you get feedback from someone, it becomes less painful. So that was one of the difficult parts early on. And then one of the surprising things, because I didn't know a lot about publishing going in, is just how long everything takes. So like it's been over 4 years since I wrote the first draft of this book, and it's coming out now, which is probably why they tell you don't write to the trend, because it takes a long time. Although it's weird because it felt like it was never going to get here, and then now that it's almost here, I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? So it's just kind of surreal to know that, by the time anyone's listening to this, I will be a published author after all this.
Yeah,
you did it.
4 years of working on it.
And I will say we are hot off the Olympic hype still, I think, and the gymnast that everybody's talking about with the glasses, I am so looking forward for whoever writes that book to release it, because
someone is doing it. Someone has probably already done it. Like they're typing away at it right now.
And now he's on Dancing with the Stars. I mean, like, talk about a glow up. I mean, amazing. And then I think people also got really into that couple where I think she competed in the Olympics and then he competed in the Paralympics, and they were both like track athletes. Yes. Yeah.
That'll be a book next. I actually read there was an Olympics rom-com this summer called Let the Games Begin. That was really good. Came out this summer. Yeah.
Very cool. I missed that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was about a track star. Yeah. Add it to the hundreds of books on your list.
To the list.
To the list. Hailey, do you have a question you want to ask?
I have another question that also character related. Who was your favorite character? Or if you had a favorite.
So, I mean, my actual favorite, like the one I would defend to the death, is definitely going to be Annie. But the most fun to write are like a lot of the side characters. So like Annie has a friend, Eric, who's a coach on the team, and he's the big goofball. I had a lot of fun writing him. I actually had a lot of fun writing the mom character, because it made me think about, so this was like, their family had revolved around the dad's coaching career, and writing the mom character, because the dad has passed away at the beginning, before the start of the book, it kind of made me think about like when I was growing up, all the stuff my mom did that I didn't appreciate to like keep the family together when my dad was coaching and stuff. Because the mom is like very much the glue of the family, I think, and she's the one like really trying to support and connect with Annie and her sister, and it actually really made me think a lot about like all the things my mom did for me.
Aww.
So hopefully she knows that now.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I have to say I love the mom character too, and I won't get too spoiler, but the moment where she rolls up her sleeves and she says, "I'm ready," I laughed out loud. It was such a good moment. I was so happy for her. I knew she was just so excited to do it, and I loved it. I thought that was so cool.
I just really enjoy, like, one of my favorite kinds of jokes is like a callback to something from much earlier that didn't seem like it was going to be anything. I don't know. That's one of my favorite kinds of jokes. And when I can find a way to like work one of those moments in, I'm always like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the phrase that they always repeat, Ben and Annie? Numbers don't mean anything, or
numbers aren't real.
Numbers aren't real. Yeah.
Yes.
That was really good too. Yeah.
Thank you.
I love that.
I love writing like banter. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's one of the best things to read is like a book that has great banter. It's so fun.
Yeah, and it came across that way too.
Yeah.
Like their relationship was just so jokey and quippy back and forth. Just the banter between Annie and Ben was unmatched in this book. I really thought that was a good aspect for it. It was great.
Thank you. When I write like two love interests, I try to think about like ways that they're similar and ways that they're different, because I feel like that's where you get good chemistry. You want them to have both. So they obviously both have like different worldviews and have had different experiences, but I wanted them to have like a similar style of like a similar sense of humor, and like they both really enjoy being competitive and sort of like they like making fun of each other, but they like when the other person makes fun of them. So I try to find those similarities and differences because I feel like that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool. I love that. Yeah. And I'll go back to the side characters too. I thought the side characters really jumped out. There's really a whole cast of people that are there to support Annie through it. Her friend group was so much fun. Cassie, the lawyer, is such a badass friend, just ready to be there no matter what. I really, really loved that. Is that similar with you as well? Like, do you have a friend group similar to Annie's?
Yeah. And I think part of what comes out of like writing a book during the worst part of the pandemic is you really miss your friends. And so of course I was going to write a great friend group, because at least I could have a fictional one to hang out with if I couldn't hang out with my real friends. But I do always love that in a romance, when they've got, people cheering them on or trying to talk sense into them. And it's always fun to see.
Yeah, that's really good. And I don't want to monopolize the conversation with too many questions, but the lasagna, the stress lasagna, I was obsessed with that. I thought that was so cool. Like, is that something, do you do stress lasagna? It sounds really complicated to make from scratch, which I've never done. I've always used store-bought lasagna noodles and sauce, honestly. Like, I'm so sorry to be this way, to out myself on the podcast.
Oh my God. So it's like Annie, it is probably like the one good thing that I can make. I learned how to make it when I studied abroad in Italy. So I do it like once a year. I make the pasta from scratch. I make a northern Italian style lasagna. So it's got like the bolognese and the bechamel. So I make it all from scratch. I usually make 2 at once, and I like freeze a bunch of it. And then after I'm done, I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that? And then I don't do it again for another year. So that's my tradition. But I don't know. I do find like, and I think it's pretty common for people to find like cooking or baking or something you do with your hands that's not really like where you have to think a lot to be like a good outlet for stress. And she is stressed a lot in especially the first part of this book. So
that is so true. That is so true. Yeah. I love that. That's such a good detail for the book. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. I agree.
Thank you.
Hailey, do you have any other questions you want to ask?
I had one, and that was there anything, and obviously you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but is there anything that you would like tell people that, maybe they want to get into writing, or they, maybe they're currently writing and they're like second guessing, like, is there any advice that you would give someone?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my first piece of advice is always like finish the thing, like finish it. Don't like start a draft and then be like, oh, it's not going to be good, and abandon it. Mm-hmm. If you have an idea for a book and you want to start writing, write it even though it's bad. My first drafts are bad. Mm-hmm. And like that's a huge thing, is just getting it on the page, and then you can like edit from there. But if you never write it because you're afraid it's going to be bad, then you're never going to do it. Yeah. So that's a big one. And then I always, because I have a day job, I have kids, so I write in like very small windows of time at night. And it takes me a long time to write a book. So like, I don't think people should get discouraged if it takes them a long time, or like if, you want to write, if you can write 1 page a day and just like plod along, and it takes you 6, 9, 12 months to finish a draft, like that's okay. You can still be a writer that way. There are so many different ways to be a writer. And then I would also encourage people, like for a long time, I thought writing was a solitary thing. But since I got my book deal, I've met so many other like wonderful writers, and we sort of exchange work sometimes and cheer each other on, and like finding the community aspect of it is really rewarding too, and makes it even more fun.
That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah. I love the writing community part of it. That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just so great. Like, everyone wins when people read more books. It's not like a competition. I'm sure, you could get bogged down in that if you wanted to, but like, it's just nice for everyone gets to celebrate each other, and just, we all want people reading more. So, it's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of, and if you write 1 page a day, average book is what, 300, 400 pages? Yeah. That's a book a year right there. So there you go.
You can do it. A page is like 250 words. You can do that, one step at a time, right?
Yeah. Stephen King does 1 book a year, so, and it's worked really well for him.
Yeah, I think I've heard that guy does pretty well.
Yeah. I think I know who he is. Yeah.
Does like horror or something. I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah. Well, there is one theme of your book that we haven't touched on yet, and I just want to give a quick trigger warning for anybody dealing with sexual assault. If this is a trigger for you, please skip ahead. But one of the aspects of your book that I thought was really raw and emotional and kind of separated it out from a lot of romances to me was really how Annie deals and confronts with sexual assault throughout the book. And, obviously we're not going to get spoiler, but it kind of comes to a head at the end. What did it feel like writing about that? Like, it's such a important topic nowadays, and it's really come up in the last 5, even 10 years. What was your process going through that?
Yeah, that was certainly the aspect of the book that I spent the most time thinking about and trying to take care with, because you want, these are real things, and if you write about it well, you can either help people or, make people think about something that's important. But if you do it in an irresponsible way, you can actually do harm. So I spent a lot of time thinking about it and trying to strike the right tone and balance for how to address it in the book. And to me, like, I've always been interested in workplace dynamics. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a lawyer, and so I think about these things a lot. But in sports, like, all of the power dynamics that exist in other workplaces are sort of magnified, just because the coaches and other people who are in power, there's so much money at stake. It's so glamorous. People are jealous that you even get to be part of it. And if you leave your job, then there's 100 people lined up out the door that would take it in a second. So I think some of the things that we see in any workplace are just like even worse or just like enhanced in that environment. So it just felt like a natural like subject to talk about in the book. And I kind of always think about sport. Like, I love sports, but I also think about them. I think it was because I wrote a sports column in college. Like, I've always thought about them in like a critical way too. Like, I love them, but I also don't want to glamorize them too much.
Right.
If that makes sense. And I think Annie thinks about that in the book too, because she makes these videos that make basketball seem really cool. And I think there's a couple of conversations she has with Ben where she's like, I don't know, like, sometimes I feel like burning it all down is the only way to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, and it's really an unfortunate aspect of sports because it's just something that seems to be happening more often, unfortunately. It's fortunate that it's being, thrown into the spotlight and that people are talking about it, but it's unfortunate that it had to happen in the first place. And yeah, I thought that was a really great aspect of the book to really bring it home and make it feel like, a real cohesive story. And it made Annie like, she's more of a character because you really see the emotional side of her, the vulnerable side of her, like it really comes out in the book too.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I also I wanted it to be something that affected Ben as well. And obviously from a different angle, but you spend a lot, every one of these stories that comes out, there's always people who are like, oh, I had no idea that this stuff was going on. I knew this person and I had no idea. So, and I'm sure sometimes that's not true, but I think probably sometimes it is true. And I spent a lot of time thinking about like, what would it be like to be one of those people? And how would that feel? And so that's what I was thinking as I was writing Ben with that plot line.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think it's also important to acknowledge too that at least I imagine from like someone who's in Ben's position where coaches tend to be like pivotal key players in a lot of their players in a lot of the players' lives growing up, especially in those adolescent or those like those years that are so formative. So to have like your essential idol that was like essentially a father figure when you don't have one, or a parental figure of some sort when you don't have one, I feel like I could see how hard it was for Ben to kind of come to terms with like, my idol isn't who I thought he was. And I thought that was such a really good and like interesting take, and I really applaud that. The way that he like handled it in the story, I thought that was a really kind of cool viewpoint, I guess, that not a lot of people realize that that's something that also happens in that industry, right? Is like your coaches sometimes are not the person that was on the pedestal that you thought that they were.
Yeah, and I feel like you see that play out like with fans. Like if you ever see the comments after there's a situation like this and people who cheered for that team, or like it's not sports, it's not even limited to sports, like this happens in Hollywood. I think it happens in like gaming, any like glamorous industry, right? Like people that are put on that pedestal when they when their bad behavior is called out, the fans who thought they knew that person, whether they did or not, the reactions are there's always a huge spectrum of how well people handle that.
Yeah.
That's so true. That is so true. Yeah. Wow. It's just, it's a great story. And when I was kind of finishing the book, and I just finished it today to make sure it's fresh in my mind, it kind of struck me as sort of like Abby Jimenez style, with like the romance, but also the real part of the character, and the pro therapy that is talked about throughout the book. I think is such a great aspect. I mean, therapy is so important. It still gets, thrown under the bus as, something that you shouldn't do unless you're really sick or something. And it's so important to talk about therapy. And it's just amazing that it's in this book.
Thank you. Yeah. And I mean, I think especially for men too, like, I don't know. At least from what I've seen, I feel like the women I know are more comfortable talking about it than the men. And both Annie and Ben are dealing with some heavy stuff at various points of this book. So I felt like it was the right thing to acknowledge that might be helpful for both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. I have one last question for you, and we always rate our books on what we call the honey scale, which is the level of romance that's in the book. One is, let me go to the official list. We call it a honey drizzle, which is like romance, very, very light, not a lot happening. To 5 is what we call a honeyed frenzy, which is very much on the page, explicit. Yes. And so I'd love to hear where you would put your book on this scale.
So when we say, are we talking about romance or about like, is this like a chili pepper scale or is this
yes, it's like a chili pepper scale.
Yep. Out of 5, we're talking out of 5.
Yep, out of 5.
Out of 5, yep.
Okay, so I would probably give it like a 2.5.
Okay.
What do you guys think?
I was also thinking a 2. I was thinking a 2. Mm-hmm. Officially, we call that the nectar nuzzle.
Yes.
A gentle sweetness that warms the heart. I think that's a perfect description. For
I mean, A+ to these names. I love it.
Thanks.
Yeah. We had a good time coming up with these for sure.
Yep. I bet. That's amazing. I'm writing this down. The next time someone asks me, because this is like one of the questions you get the most in like your Instagram DMs as an author, I'm going to say it's a nectar nuzzle. And they're going to be like, and when they say, what does that mean? I will refer them to the podcast.
Heck yeah.
There we go. We love it. We love it. Great. Well, Jamie, do you want to share with our listeners where they can find you, where they can buy your book, all the information that you have coming out, and where we can keep track of you and what happens in the future?
Sure. So One-on-One is out today, September 24th. It is available wherever you buy books. It's available in print, ebook, and audiobook format. I would like to give a special shout out to the audiobook narrator. Kyla Garcia did an amazing job. And you can find me mostly on Instagram at Jamie Harrow Books. I am also occasionally on TikTok at Jamie Harrow Writes. And my website is jamieharrow.com.
Yay. By the way, you totally kill it on TikTok and Instagram. Yes. I love all of your posts. They're basketball themed. Mm-hmm. They're amazing. They're just perfect. They're perfect. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I try to have fun with it because social media can be a scary place, but so I'm just trying to have a good time.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it. And everybody go please to your bookstore and buy One-on-One right now. It's available. Check it out and give it a review because we're so excited for this book to come out and it's amazing.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much to Jamie Harrow again for coming on to our podcast. We absolutely loved it. That was a fantastic interview. We are so excited to have our first interview in the books. Thank you so much. And what a fantastic book. Again, if you'd like to order her book, you can go on to where any booksellers exist to buy books and find it there. We'd love to have you support her. The book did come out today as you're listening to this recording on September 24th. So go buy it right now. Pause the podcast, even though we're almost done. Just go buy the book.
Go.
However you buy it, go buy it. Thank you so much, Jamie, again for coming on. You're amazing.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so excited.
Yeah. And if you want to talk to us about how amazing Jamie Harrow's book is, or if you're an author and want to contact us, you can email us at booksinthebeespod@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at booksinthebeespod. And if you're not an author, just email us anyway and say, hey, what's up? Or DM us on Instagram, say, hey, what's up? We want to chat with you. We want to connect with the Hive Mind. So please, please, please follow us on our social media pages. We also, I keep forgetting to mention this, but we also have our personal Instagram pages in our show notes now. So feel free to go there and follow us because we both do a lot of great stuff. Hailey does a lot more than I do because I haven't been on Instagram in like a month since I moved. But thank you so much. We love your support and we appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
We would also love a 5-star review on your podcast listening app. So feel free to just do that. If this is if for whatever reason you're just listening to this one tidbit of our podcast, like you just happen to catch this second of listening time, It doesn't matter that you haven't listened to anything else. Just go give us the 5 stars. We did great. Trust us. Just give us the 5 stars and then go listen to everything else.
Give us a 5 stars. Go back to our very first episode. Listen to that one and then listen continuously to all the rest of them.
And thank you. And thank you for doing that. You're great.
Yes, we appreciate it. Thank you. In advance.
In advance. And of course, we have to give a huge shout out to the American Indie for the use of the song Rendezvous. It's a bop. We love it. Intro and outro to our podcast. They're doing amazing work. And as always, their link to Spotify is in our show notes as well. So feel free to go check them out and give them a follow as well.
I agree. All right, well, with that, we hope you enjoyed this literary journey as much as we did. If you're buzzing with excitement, don't forget to subscribe, email us, and leave a high 5-worthy review on your podcast listening app. Until next time, happy reading, and may your shelves be filled with tales as enchanting as a blooming garden. Keep the buzz alive, and we'll catch you in the next chapter. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.